Free speech has been under attack in the West for quite some time now, and it's tended to be a one-way street, with conservative voices quashed, while radicals retain untrammelled liberty. This is especially prevalent in education. Many moderate figures like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Brendan O'Neill, Ann Coulter, Christina Hoff Sommers, Heather MacDonald, Amber Rudd, Suzanne Venker, Selena Todd, Kathleen Stock, Adam Perkins, Milo Yiannopoulos, Carl Benjamin, Charles Murray, David Starkey, Roger Scruton, and Anthony Glees have all been driven off campus at various points. Christy Higgs, a teaching assistant in Fairford, Gloucestershire, was summarily dismissed after expressing mild concerns about pushing trans policies on primary school children. When Joe Barron, a supply teacher on a 0 hours contract, gently questioned the leftist hegemony in the history department, he was bullied and sacked. Many other academics have faced terrible persecution. Nigel Biggar, Philip Adamo, Rosa Friedman, Lindsay Shepherd, and Tim Hunt were horrifically bullied or driven from the profession. Noah Carl was fired by Cambridge University following protest from numerous students who had never read his research. Surveys have shown that 75% of Conservatives feel unable to air their political views on campus, while only 15% of Democrats feel similarly inhibited. And the same is true of the big tech giants of Silicon Valley. Twitter has issued lifetime bans on Milo Yiannopoulos, Tommy Robinson, Gavin McInnes, Katie Hopkins, Britain First, and myself. Yet thousands, if not millions of leftist figures remain to spout hate-filled rhetoric all day long. Facebook banned Paul Joseph Watson, Milo Yiannopoulos, and a string of other right-leaning figures. In 2018, Twitter banned the NPC meme, which mocks leftist groupthink, deleting 1,500 accounts. In August 2018, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and Twitter all banned InfoWars within a handful of hours. In February 2019, Tommy Robinson was banned from Facebook, Instagram, and PayPal. His book on the Quran was also removed from Amazon, a site that still sells Mein Kampf and Mao's Little Red Book. YouTube later banned thousands of channels, all right-leaning, and introduced stringent new laws on censorship. Stefan Molyneux was canned by the streaming site shortly after criticising the rising censorship of the media giants. Hundreds of his films and millions of comments were casually deleted. YouTube also employs algorithms to shadow ban channels, like this one, hindering any attempts to reach a wider audience. Wikipedia also tilts alarmingly to the left. Its incipient bias is evident in virtually every article, and any right-wing editors are swiftly driven from the online encyclopedia. When Google asked for feedback and James Damore exercised his right to freedom of speech, the company promptly fired him. What's been taking place is nothing less than a digital book burning. For if you do not defend the free speech of views you find distasteful, then you do not believe in free speech at all. Comedians like Andrew Lawrence, Daniel O'Reilly, and Will Franken have also been driven from the mainstream. This culture is even affecting literature. Publishers bin Woody Allen's memoirs, as well as Julie Burchill's book on free speech. When Mark Knight, a newspaper cartoonist, did a caricature of Serena Williams, a petition demanded his sacking. Doug Adler, of ESPN, was commentating on a Venus Williams match when he described a guerrilla raid to the net. There were complaints, so he explained the lexical mix-up. It didn't matter. He was fired anyway. In the last 5 years, police in England and Wales have recorded 120,000 non-crime hate incidents, averaging 66 a day. Brian Leach was sacked from Asda for sharing a Billy Connolly video. Matthew Woods, just 19, was imprisoned for 3 months for posting some Madeleine McCann jokes. Mark Meekham, also known as Count Dankula, was prosecuted for a comedy film featuring his girlfriend's pug. Lauren Southern, Martin Seller and Brittany Pettibone were detained at customs and grilled for 2 days before being deported, prevented from speaking to UK audiences. Alistair Stewart, Toby Young and Roger Scruton were all hounded from their jobs for confected thought crimes. Tommy Robinson was arrested before even opening his mouth at Speaker's Corner, supposedly Britain's most hallowed bastion of free speech. These numerous examples are just the tip of the iceberg. So free speech is very much under threat. But the real issue is much bigger than this. John Stuart Mill and George Orwell both wrote extensively on how social pressure is far more effective at constraining freedom of speech than any legislation. What they called the yoke of opinion is the real barrier to freedom of speech. Mill memorably summed this up when saying, "There's no parity between the feeling of a person for his own opinion and the feeling of another who is offended at him holding it. No more than between the desire of a thief to take a purse and the desire of the right owner to keep it." Millions now feel that they cannot relax or unwind in conversation, that they must continually monitor their own speech, lest some lefty gets the wrong end of the stick and proceeds to beat them with it. I've been privately contacted by a number of subscribers to this channel who were very clear that they could not express their support openly for fear of getting bullied or sacked. A black sense of humour is one of the great coping mechanisms of humanity, yet it's been practically driven from social interaction by an army of curtain-twitching busybodies. It's a bleak time for any true lover of free speech in the West. Perhaps the worst we've experienced for generations. But 2 recent cases have shown that the tide may be turning. Kate Scotto had been reported to the police by Stephanie Hayden, a trans individual, for referring to her as he. Hayden had also pressed charges against Graham Linehan, Adrian Yelland, Caroline Farrow and Louise Moody. Scotto was her 5th legal complaint in just 2 years. Kate was arrested, dragged over the coals, her phone and laptop was seized for an entire year, she suffered a traumatic experience, and she was convicted of a hate crime. Yet the Court of Appeals has now quashed that conviction. In a landmark judgment, Lords Justice Bean and Warby concluded that free speech encompasses the right to offend, and indeed abuse another. It is a serious interference with the right of free speech if those wishing to express their own views could be silenced by or threatened with proceedings for harassment based on subjective claims by individuals that felt offended or insulted. It feels like a breakthrough. Of course, whether the police take any notice of the judgment and alter their practices is another thing. But another case, this time in the university system, offers more hope. The Cambridge Student Union had hoped to introduce a new statement on freedom of speech, which, predictably, did the opposite of its stated aim. It would have required scholars, speakers and students to be respectful of differing opinions, though you can be sure that respect would not be extended to the political right. Indeed, the new policy suggested that speakers could still be banned if they threatened the welfare of students, a vague assertion repeatedly employed to stifle conservative opinion. After all, this measure was supported by Stephen Toop, the university's vice-chancellor, who had been behind the sacking of Noah Carl and the banning of Jordan Peterson. Cambridge showed little respect for differing opinions there, though they let Priyamvada Gopal carry on being as racist and abusive as she likes. Under normal circumstances, the university would simply have been bullied into passing this draconian legislation. But this time, a philosophy don, one Arif Ahmed, who is on the advisory council of the Free Speech Union, elected to take a risk. He could well go down as a great hero for freedom of speech. If they ever turn his story into a Bollywood film, I vote that he gets the leading part himself. Ahmed suggested the respect demand should be amended to one requiring tolerance, a subtle but important distinction. He also proposed that speakers should only be vetoed for breaking the law or for libel. It was put to a vote, and while 162 voted for Toop's respect policy, 1,316 supported the amendments. It was a resounding crushing of woke censorship. In my films and books, I've long argued that Western civilization has allowed itself to be bullied by a shrill minority, which have relied on aggression and intimidation. And this case showed just how small that minority is. Even at Cambridge, one of the epicentres of the recent madness. This battle is a long way from finished, but these cases represent the first victory in the long battle ahead, and they should give hope to all those crushed by the social pressure of the sanctimonious bullies who've been throwing their weight around for far too long. The war will be long and hard from this point, but we will win. If you've enjoyed this film, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in these topics, I've written 2 books which go into them in extensive detail. They're available on the links below. Please feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.